Hello everyone, in this video I just wanted to make a few notices before we begin. There are going to be timestamps below to go and skip over to any section you want to within this video, settings, specific segments, etc. So go and do that. The other thing is please be sure to follow Entropia over on Twitter or X. Tons of different stuff going to be coming there in the future, as well as myself. And also a notice on my own trading, I am slightly moving over towards Hyperliquid. So I'm going to leave a link down below if you want to be moving over to there. I'm finding it really, really powerful as a DEX and just stuff like that. I've gained no affiliation with them at all in relation to them paying me for anything. I just think, yeah, that's where I'm starting to slowly move over my trading, it seems. But yeah, let's get into it. So volume profile, and let's get into that. So what we're going to be covering is full volume profile. So the components, different things about them, etc., etc. And the first thing I want to start off with is the tools you're going to be using, especially within TradingView. This is the most common platform. Yeah. So if we just head over to TradingView, as you can see, we have at the bottom here on my one, this is the fixed range volume profile. I'm going to show you the settings of this, but you can find this if you click on the projection section here, the fifth one down, and then you're going to go to the bottom here, and you have this tool here. You're going to click on that. And I would favorite it and have that in the toolbar here, and you can get it from here. This is the only one I'm really using the most, to be honest. You can obviously have the visible range on, which is anchored to the right and is dependent on where you're moving your screen. It will adjust the volume profile there. But I'll talk you through how I use the fixed range tool, and I think why it's more important in my opinion, because you can make more precise pulls with it in relation to ranges, trending moves, etc. But again, there are use cases for that visible range as a quick glance to many markets if you're going to be doing that. But yeah, the volume profile tool, just, without getting into, before we even get into it too much, basically volume a lot of the time is, people are referring to volume as looking at the bottom bar here. So you can see down here, this is like when volume is coming in. So like, when are we seeing spikes in volume? This is telling us when we're seeing these spikes in volume. Okay, so you can see down here we're getting spikes at this time, at this time, at this time. But the more powerful thing is knowing where that volume is coming in. So rather than when, you want to be focusing on more so on where, as in price levels. And these price levels give really actionable points to be able to pull the right volume profile. So with this tool, by the way, these are my settings: ticks per row, 250 delta. If you want to just imitate these settings, go for it. And it's a much more granular look, and you're going to want to adjust these settings based on the chart you're looking at. If you're looking at altcoins or ESXU, you're going to want to adjust the row size for a more granular look. But overall, you're going to want a volume profile that looks somewhat similar to this if you're going to go for the look that I use for my trading. And volume profile, again, just I'll say this as well to begin with, is such a powerful tool. It's something I'm using every day. I speak to massive traders, and it's just something we're all using, in reference to finding great levels, finding areas, finding mean reversion plays, finding, tons of different things, and we'll cover it all here anyway. So yes, obviously the volume profile is telling us where price is coming in, where volume is coming in, where we're seeing spikes in volume, and I'm going to cover each individual component of this all in a second. But yeah, okay, well, we might as well cover it now, which is obviously, we have this volume profile here. I've just taken a random pull, okay? And I'll talk you through how we're going to pull these in a minute. But a volume profile has some basic components that I want to walk you through to begin with. The first one being the point of control. The point of control, where the most volume has come in, okay? This is where the most volume is coming in. The value area high and the value area low, okay? And this value area, this gray area in this pool here specifically, this is where the most of the volume is coming in within the volume profile itself. Okay, and I've set my value area to 68%. This is where most of the volume is coming in. Generally, and I'll talk you through this, it's not too powerful if you're doing it with a random pool, but if price exceeds outside the value and revisits back within it, that can be a sense for rotation to some extent. Don't just look at that as a blanket statement. There's a lot more nuance to it, to be honest, than just range rotation based on the value area, in my opinion. So there are a few components here. I want to briefly touch upon these. Value area high and value area low. Okay, although they can be used as SR levels, I'll talk you through when you can do that. There's a good example here. But mainly they're used for gauging, fair value rotation, in my opinion. Seeing deviations outside of ranges back in, that is like more of a, you're using these as like levels to situate regains and, losses of a range or a move or weakness, rather than actually just taking a trade directly off the level, at least in my opinion. Point of control, yes, as well, the same thing. Not the same thing, actually. You could be looking for definitely a reaction here. as well as high volume nodes. So a high volume node, obviously you've got value high, value low, point of control. The point of the high volume node is literally, it's very similar to the point of control. It's just another region in which there's been a high volume that is not the point of control, because basically with the volume profile, you want to be finding untested areas of volume, which I'll get into in a second, where you're likely to see a reaction. Okay, so like down here, even where we are right now, I'll talk you through this. Really live in the time, we're seeing this move towards the upside. Now we're retracing into this naked area, which hasn't been tested for a while, which has its own high volume node. Okay, so this high volume node is not the point of control, but there's still an area of high volume when you look at it visually. Okay, and although, you know, you've got the value low coming in here, you also have it really on top of a high volume node. So you could be looking at this and saying, this is now a key area of support, price really coming down to there. Okay, so you know, you don't just have to be looking at reactions from the point of control. The volume profile itself has many components, but the component of having a high volume node that can still act as an SR level, and a really good SR level, because it's not always the easiest to spot, and you know, you can have some really nice plays with them, in my opinion. Okay, so that's point of control, value high, value low. I'll cover a bit more in range rotations in a second. But yeah, you know, when I'm talking about high volume, so you know, we're talking about volume profiles here. And this is simply transaction amounts. Okay, this is really important to understand this. If I say here, for example, we've got a volume profile and you've got a really high amount of volume here and a high amount of volume here, that doesn't mean to say that there's a ton of new positions opening at this level. There could be, but you really need to dive into open interest, okay, to actually understand that. So if I, for example, turn this on, and this is where you need to like have an open interest profile. I just want to get the clarification clear on this. Volume is not an indication of open interest. They're completely two different things. Volume is just transactions, although one could lead from another. I really would say, for example, if there's a high amount of volume, you really want to be diving, if you want to dive into open interest, all I'm just saying here is don't automatically make the assumption that this is a high volume node here. There's a lot of people who have opened the position previously here are going to be, you know, likely to see a bounce or whatever. That's not the case. You really need to dive into open interest rather than just making, you know, blind assumptions. Okay, in that case, I just really want to mention that. But yes, positioning, use it in conjunction with open interest. So for example, I'll just talk you through this. If, for example, we're looking at this zone here where the point of control zone is, okay, all of this, what is open interest doing within this period? Okay, you saw a slight increase here within this candle, but overall within this zone, I would say it's fairly neutral. So there isn't like an exceeding amount of new positions opening here. Okay, in reference to the open interest at the bottom. In reference to the open interest at the bottom, that would lead me to say, okay, when price comes back into this zone, it's going to 100%, you know, any new positions to have opened here will defend it and see a potential reversion, because this is what is important with the volume profile. Okay, is in reference to positioning. You know, if, for example, there's a high amount of volume, what does that mean? It means there's people interested in transacting there, number one. But if you have a large amount of new positions who have entered here, for example, if you've got, imagine we had a large amount of longs who had entered here before, new longs, then when price revisits this for the first time, those new longs are still freshly potentially in the market. I mean, they have the highest potential still being in the market at this stage. So if they're underwater and price revisits their level, you know, the likelihood is that they could be closing at break even. Thus, you're going to see a potential rejection. If they're closing at break even, you've entered a long, you're closing it at break even, you're closing it, that means you're inherently shorting. So when price revisits your level, you're going to be shorting, and that's going to, you know, inherently see a potential reaction to the downside that you, as a person looking at the volume profile, could, you know, take a play off of. Okay, so it's important to understand open interest and volume. They're two separate things. Really understand understand both together. So you can be looking here, you know, at exo charts and stuff like that. So you look at the open interest a lot more, or open interest profiles. I would highly recommend you go over to exo charts, and you can start actually looking at open interest profiles. We have open interest based profiles that you can be really diving into there to, you know, and I've got a whole new video on that as well. So just go look at that if you wish. But yeah, that is the core components of it, understanding positioning. Now, what's more important is placement, okay? Because let's say, for example, I just drew this placement here that we've been kind of talking about for the last, I don't know, 10 minutes. This is, I just took this really randomly. You don't want to be doing that. You want to be taking really, be more objective and methodical in your pools of a volume profile. The first one I'll talk to you about is probably the simplest one, and my favorite is trending moves. Okay, so a very clear trending move. So I mean, right here, I mean, I could really take it from here. From the entire thing is trending up. It's Bitcoin right now, but I would take it from a slight stagnation period. So you can see price has moved up here, and now you started this. Although we're still uptrending here, it's more still slowly uptrending from here rather than like a really aggressive move. So I'm going to take it from here, the first candle to current price. This is much more of a pool that I'm actually going to be taking and using for my trading. Okay, definitely. Now you have the same components again, or on the 4 hours higher time frame, but you can still use it on the lower time frame. And this is more, price is uptrending, but this is more of like an uptrending / range bound pool. Okay, to give you these levels. And the power in, I'll do a much more clearer uptrending move here. Let's just say like this. So this is a clear uptrend, and you want to be taking it from, again, like in an uptrend, it's usually just a pivot low. Okay, the key about using, for example, an uptrending move as a volume profile is that the volume, when you come back towards it, I'll just draw this out quickly. If price is uptrending, and then you've taken a pull of this ongoing volume profile, when price is revisiting any of this volume previously, it's it's untested. You haven't revisited it at all. It's all fresh volume. Thus, any sort of high volume node, POC, good volume level that you find within this is going to potentially find provide a reaction. Okay, so yeah, it's really, really powerful to look at it in that sense as well in regards to volume profile. So I'll talk you through this now, especially if I'm let's delete this. If we look at this from here, okay, so price is uptrending. I've taken it from this high. Now you're seeing a retrace. You'd be thinking, okay, high volume node or POC here. But then also, I mean, this is what led to, in this case, trend continuation, like major trend continuation. If I just bring this in, it's a bit hard to see. I know, hopefully it's good enough for you to see here. But you can see here, right, this is a ton of high volume here, right? This is a lot of high volume. Then you have this gap, and I'll talk about gaps in a minute as well. But you've got another area of high volume, which alternatively just could be its own point of control, okay? And if you took this out, you can see that price, in my opinion, again, this is the way I would look at a volume profile that's uptrending like this. High volume node, you bounce off the POC slightly, or, you're holding it for quite a bit. It then bounces into your high volume node. Okay, sees the bounce again, retest again, bouncing away, and it never loses that high volume node. Whoops, I've just gone onto the Coinbase chart. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, so we've seen the bounce from there, and then alternatively, if it lost this level, I'll be thinking to myself, where's the next untested volume or high volume that price could really rocket down to if it loses this level? And I'll be saying down here. I mean, you can see, this is maybe down here. You have a slight high amount, but there's a massive gap, and then you've got this level down here. So you'd be looking for price to really see a drop at that point. And that's the power of all these untested volume levels. They generally do provide better reactions. And trending pools are, in my opinion, the best for identifying, trend continuation plays off of these high volume nodes, POC plays, etc. Especially when you're looking at, I'll mention this, when I'm looking at a trending pool, I'm not really, you can be, I'm not too interested in like the value high and value low. They're not going to provide, in my opinion, unless they're in conjunction or have confluence with like a high volume node, they're not of my interest too much, at least in a trending pool. Okay, so if we just delete all of this and we head back, now let's talk about a range bound pool. So if we just talk about, if we just look at this massive range we were previously in, this was like the easiest thing at the time to be focusing on, which was again focusing on this, like talking about the range pools. I'll do a few examples for you as well. Impulse, and then the first down candle, and then you have like these. This is where, like, in my opinion, this first down candle is where the range starts. You start this, and you see the revisitation. And again, as you're in the time, I don't know if it's going to mess it up. As you're in the time, obviously, you're still thinking this is trending at this point, but as time slowly goes on, we don't need to do that. Ignore it. As time slowly goes on from this point here, okay, you're going to start to recognize that this is a range forming, and you're going to take it from here. So I'd say, like, even if it's like a week or two after, this is where I'd start taking my fixed range pool from the first down candle and dragging it across to current price action, wherever you are. But let's say we're here at this point, before the range breakout. Now you've got I remember we had a really good volume profile, which, when I'm looking at a I'll talk about the nuances again in this case. When you've got a range bound volume profile, I personally like to break it down a bit further, because let me know if this is too complex, by the way, because I'm talking a bit more about specific nuances that I really pay attention to. But let's say we've got a range, where price is here. I've taken it to here, where we are now. Do I feel all of these high volume nodes, yes, they could act as SR levels, great. But, this is all volume we've kind of ran through. We've kind of ran through all this volume. It's been pounded through already multiple times. We're ranging through it already tons of times. Is it going to be as a good indicator upon the, its 18th touch? I'm not too sure. Personally, I don't do that. So I'd be, again, simplifying it down to, more local pools. Again, I'd break it down even further. Does that mean to just completely ignore range-bound pools? I don't think so. The way I like to look at this is actually looking at those range rotation plays a little bit more. And that's why I say to not just blindly look at range rotations based on value high, value low. I would be looking at it a bit more in this case in relation to, do I think we're going to break up from a range or break out or so on and so forth? Once we're up and above the range highs, especially in the beginning, you're thinking, okay, if it holds here, continuation. If it doesn't, to treat it as a range rotation. I'm not really taking direct levels off of this, but I'm forming more of a bias in relation to my plays. I mean, I remember this here. This was like a really clean break. Okay, this was like a really clean break of the range value high that you've seen resistance from multiple times, in the past. And then if you just dragged it along to here, I was remembering, okay, we've come back inside, and then you just had this massive blast off that kind of obscures any of that value area nonsense, and you're outside of it again. So I'm using this really for range rotations to understand, where do I think this range is going to be doing? I'm not necessarily longing above this, although in this case, yes, in this one case, it massively played out, and, that's when you then start adapting. But you're not blindly longing above, you're cautious upon it, revisiting back, returning back into the range, and so on and so forth. So that's the way I'd be looking at range rotations in relation to value or high, value or low. And especially with range pools, they're a bit different, in my opinion, to trending pools, and I much prefer trending pools. And what I would do is, if we've got a range right now, because a lot of the time Bitcoin's ranging a lot of the time, and that's how my trading is specialized, ranging, and occasionally actually trending as well, but that's more for spot plays. I would isolate, let's say price is down here, I'm isolating a local trending move, to provide more fresh levels than just to be trading off of these more ran through, like I said before, value high, value low POCs that have been touched many times. So yes, that's one way I take a pool. Again, I'll do another example of the pool is that, you see a massive aggressive move down your first up candle in this case. Okay, so when you're massive trending down, then you see your first up candle to, in this case, it broke down here, and that's where you then have a separate range. What the hell's going on? And then you have another value area, high, value, low, that you can be basing things off of. But again, like I said, I would break it down even further, okay? So hopefully that's making sense in that sense. The other thing I wanted to cover is gaps. Okay, so like if I went to, I'm on the daily. If I take a more fixed range tool from here to the high, you're going to have gaps. So obviously I discussed the core components before, which are like the value high, value low, POC, high volume nodes that come into confluence with everything. But you're going to have these areas which are very clear, in my opinion, they can be, where you have gaps, like something like this, and this is again your own visual interpretation of it, where the volume is not significant at all in relation to the rest of the profile, or just, it is a massive drop off. Okay, so you can see a lot of volume and value being created up here, and then you have this gap, and then you have a bit more volume and value being created down here, a lot more. So this gap is, how would we play this gap? How do I look at these gaps in volume profiles now that you understand why I'm taking this pool? It's a trending move pool. These are naked volume regions, okay? What would I do? Well, the gap has three components. I planned on doing a separate video on this, but I might as well talk about it now as well a little bit. The gap has three components, which is the first, so in this case, we're above the gap and the first touch into it, the bottom of it, and the middle of it. Now, ideally, the most bullish scenario, again, when you're looking at uptrending moves or downtrending moves, it would be the bearish scenario. But the most bullish scenario, because we're above it, it would be a move to the first, the first level, and then switch quickly back out of it. When you see acceptance into this gap, you will generally tend to see a complete fill of it. Okay, and in that case, more so continuation. So these gaps, what I would say is that you don't want to be blindly longing in the middle of this, because this is where things can really cascade really quickly. There isn't many orders here holding up price previously that would want to defend their positions. It can really just see a cascade at that point. So what I would say, I'll really touch upon it quickly, is that you would see a quick bounce from the first move into it. And if it doesn't bounce from there and it really hovers around here, the likelihood is it's filling, and I wouldn't be wanting to get involved at any of this point. And although that looks like a small region, that I just drew out, that is a 6, 7, 8% zone where I'm not going to be really interested in fading that move drastically to the upside, for example. So hopefully that makes sense in relation to that. Like I said, there are tons of different tools you can be using, the VBRs, session, volume profile. I mean, again, if we just head over to EXO quickly, down here on the right, on the bottom left, I don't have the volume profile up, but you can obviously be taking a volume profile for individual sessions. Okay, you can be taking individual session volume profiles and combining those and looking at different things from there, like trending sessions. I might do a whole video on that. I probably already have done a video on that, so just go check it out. Session, TPO, and something like that, volume profile. But that is, that's volume profiles. There are a few things there. Like I said, my most favorite pools are like the trending moves. If we just take it into account right now, what am I looking at? Well, I'm going to be looking personally. This is a lot of sideways movement. I think price is really uptrending aggressively from here to where we are now. And this provides a lot of nuance. And I would be saying to myself now, like, this move is really aggressively uptrending. What would I say here? I wouldn't really be interested in this, in shorting this unless it lost any sort of significant level, which it hasn't lost the point of control, and if it did lose it, then I'd be looking for complete trend, revisitation of the absolute pivot at this point. Okay, so there's tons of different ways you can be looking at things, but ultimately these trending moves, especially isolating them from within a larger range, is really, really powerful for key levels. And again, check out POC liquidity on my channel. I have a great video on that. That's like one of my favorite ways of identifying key levels to be trading from as well, in relation to volume. But thank you all for watching. Again, check out Entropia. Check out Hyperliquid. I think it's really great, by the way. I am trading over there now a little bit, so we'll do that. But again, check out Entropia, check out me. Timestamps. Thank you everyone for watching. Again, thank you for the recent support. I appreciate you all.